The vast expanse of the American Southwest holds countless secrets beneath its sun-baked surface. But sometimes, those secrets refuse to stay buried. Today, we're diving into a haunting mystery that combines the dangers of ranch life with the industrial boom that has transformed our rural landscapes forever. Picture this: a hardworking female rancher disappears without a trace while moving cattle through remote desert terrain. For 9 long years, her family searches for answers. Investigators follow cold leads, and life slowly moves on. Then, in a twist that sounds like something out of a thriller movie, an oil drilling operation strikes something metallic deep beneath. The desert floor, something that would finally provide the closure everyone desperately needed. The American West has always been a land of extremes. Endless horizons stretch in every direction, punctuated only by distant mountain ranges and the occasional cluster of ranch buildings. It's a place where cattle ranching has been a way of life for generations, where families work thousands of acres with nothing but determination, horses and an intimate knowledge of the land passed down through the decades. But in recent years, this traditional landscape has been transformed by another industry entirely: oil and gas extraction. The same remote areas where cattle once grazed undisturbed have become dotted with drilling rigs, processing facilities and networks of pipelines. This intersection of old and new, tradition and progress, has created a complex web of interests across the American Southwest. Ranch families who have worked the same land for generations now find themselves navigating lease agreements with energy companies. The promise of royalty payments can be tempting, especially when cattle prices fluctuate and drought years make ranching even more challenging than usual. But this partnership between ranching and oil extraction comes with its own set of risks and complications. Sarah Martinez had ranching in her blood. The 34-year-old single mother had taken over the family's 12,000-acre spread after her father's passing, proving herself just as capable as any third-generation rancher in the area. She knew every canyon, every water source, and every dangerous section of fence line across their property. Sarah was the kind of person who could read weather patterns in cloud formations and spot a sick calf from half a mile away. On that fateful October morning, Sarah set out to move a herd of about 150 head of cattle from the north pasture to winter grazing areas closer to the ranch headquarters. It was routine work, the kind of task she had performed hundreds of times before. The cattle were familiar with the route, and Sarah's horse Thunder was a seasoned cow pony who could practically work cattle in his sleep. The plan was simple: gather the herd at first light, move them along the established trail system, and have them settled in their new pasture by afternoon. Sarah's mother expected her back for dinner by 6 o'clock. When sunset came and went without any sign of Sarah or Thunder, the family knew something was terribly wrong. Sarah wasn't the type to take unnecessary risks or deviate from established plans without good reason. She carried emergency supplies, knew the location of every fence line and gate, and had grown up learning to handle whatever challenges the desert might throw at her. The fact that she had simply vanished, along with her horse and the entire herd of cattle, defied all logic within. Hours of Sarah's failure to return home, her family had organized search parties. Local ranchers, sheriff's deputies and volunteer search and rescue teams combed the area on horseback, in ATVs, and eventually with helicopters provided by the state. The search area covered over 50 square miles of rugged terrain, including deep arroyos, rocky outcroppings and sections of desert that remained largely unchanged since the days of the frontier. What made the disappearance even more puzzling was the complete absence of the cattle herd. A group of 150 head of cattle doesn't simply vanish without leaving some kind of trail. Cattle leave hoofprints, disturb vegetation, and create dust clouds visible from considerable distances. Yet searchers found no trace of the animals Sarah had been moving that morning. The investigation revealed several troubling details. Sarah's truck and trailer were found exactly where she had left them, at the gate leading to the north pasture. Her cell phone had been left in the truck, a common practice in areas with spotty coverage. Most disturbing of all, investigators found evidence that the cattle had indeed been gathered and were being moved along the expected route before all traces simply stopped at a particular section of the ranch. Local law enforcement treated the case as a potential crime from the beginning. The complete disappearance of both Sarah and the cattle suggested the possibility of rustling gone. Wrong or worse, but as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the lack of physical evidence or credible leads left investigators frustrated and the Martinez family desperate for answers. As the search for Sarah continued, investigators began examining every aspect of her life and the ranch operation. The Martinez family had been dealing with the same challenges facing many ranching families across the Southwest: declining cattle prices, drought conditions, and the ongoing pressure to consider mineral rights leases with energy companies. Several oil and gas companies had approached the Martinez family over the years about leasing rights to explore their property. While Sarah had been initially resistant to allowing industrial operations on their ranch, family financial pressures had eventually led to preliminary discussions with Apex Energy Corporation about a potential lease agreement. These negotiations had apparently become contentious in the weeks before Sarah's disappearance. According to family members, Sarah had become increasingly concerned about the environmental impact of proposed drilling operations on their cattle and water sources. She had reportedly told her mother that she was planning to reject Apex Energy's latest offer, despite the significant financial incentive it represented. This revelation opened up new avenues for the investigation. Had Sarah's stance on the mineral rights lease created enemies? Were there business interests that might benefit from her disappearance? The investigation expanded to include interviews with energy company representatives, examination of lease agreements and correspondence, and analysis of the complex web of financial and legal relationships surrounding mineral rights in the area. The investigation stretched into its second and third years. The Martinez family faced the devastating reality that Sarah might never be found. The official case remained open, but active search efforts had been scaled back dramatically. Occasionally, reported sightings would spark renewed interest, but these leads invariably proved to be false hopes. The ranch itself became a shadow of its former operation. Without Sarah's expertise and leadership, the family struggled to maintain their cattle operation. The financial strain of continuing the search, combined with the ongoing costs of running the ranch, created additional pressure to consider the mineral rights lease that Sarah had been so adamant about rejecting. During this period, the energy boom in the region continued to accelerate. New drilling operations were established on neighboring properties, and the network of access roads, pipelines, and processing facilities continued to expand across the landscape. The Martinez family watched as their neighbors negotiated increasingly lucrative lease agreements, while their own financial situation became more precarious with each passing year. Sarah's mother, Elena Martinez, became a tireless advocate for missing persons cases in rural areas. She worked with law enforcement agencies to improve search protocols and pushed for better coordination between local, state, and federal authorities in cases involving disappearances on ranch land. Elena's efforts led to the establishment of a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting families dealing with similar tragedies. 9 years after Sarah's disappearance, Apex Energy Corporation finally received approval to begin exploratory drilling operations on a section of state land adjacent to the Martinez Ranch. The drilling site was located approximately 3 miles from where searchers had last found evidence of Sarah's cattle moving operation. The drilling crew was working on what appeared to be a routine exploratory well when their equipment encountered unexpected resistance at a depth of about 40 feet. Instead of the sedimentary rock layers they expected to find, the drill bit struck something metallic. The sound was unmistakable, the distinctive clang of metal hitting metal that every experienced driller recognizes immediately. Initially, the crew assumed they had encountered an old piece of abandoned equipment, or possibly debris, from an earlier undocumented drilling operation. Such discoveries weren't uncommon in areas with a long history of mineral extraction. However, when they attempted to drill around the obstruction, they discovered that the metallic object was much larger than initially suspected. The drilling supervisor made the decision to halt operations and investigate the anomaly more thoroughly. Using specialized equipment, They determined that the metallic object was approximately 20 feet long and appeared to be some kind of trailer or large container that had been deliberately buried. The depth and positioning of the object suggested it had been placed there with considerable effort and planning. At this point, the drilling supervisor contacted local authorities, and within hours, the site had been secured as a potential crime scene. The realization that this discovery might be connected to Sarah Martinez's disappearance sent shockwaves through the local community and reignited interest in the case that had gone cold years earlier. The excavation process was painstaking and methodical. Forensic experts, law enforcement investigators, and specialized equipment operators worked together to carefully uncover what turned out to be a large livestock trailer that had been buried beneath tons of desert soil and rock. The trailer's condition suggested it had been underground for several years, and its position indicated it had been placed there deliberately rather than buried by natural processes. As the excavation continued, investigators made increasingly disturbing discoveries. Inside the trailer, they found the remains of numerous cattle, evidence that at least part of Sarah's missing herd had been located. But more significantly, they also found personal items that were quickly identified as belonging to Sarah Martinez, including her distinctive belt buckle and the saddle that had been custom-made for her by a local craftsman. The discovery of Sarah's remains brought a devastating end to 9 years of uncertainty for the Martinez family. While the family finally had closure regarding Sarah's fate, the circumstances of her death raised new questions about what had happened on that October morning so many years earlier. Forensic analysis of the scene revealed evidence of violence, suggesting that Sarah had not died accidentally. The positioning of the remains and the condition of the trailer indicated that this had been a planned disposal site, rather than the location where the initial crime had occurred. Someone had gone to considerable effort to hide the evidence of Sarah's murder and the theft of her cattle. The investigation that followed Sarah's discovery revealed a complex criminal conspiracy involving cattle theft, mineral rights fraud, and murder. The evidence pointed to a sophisticated operation that had been targeting ranchers across the region for several years, using their knowledge of local terrain and industry connections to carry out crimes and dispose of evidence. The central figure in the conspiracy was revealed to be Marcus Webb, a former ranch manager who had been employed by several different operations in the area over the past decade. Webb had used his insider knowledge of ranch operations and cattle movements to identify opportunities for theft, while also leveraging his connections with energy companies to identify properties with valuable mineral rights. Webb's operation involved stealing cattle during routine ranch work, then using forged documentation to sell the animals through legitimate livestock markets in other states. The profits from these thefts were used to fund more ambitious schemes involving fraudulent mineral rights leases and land acquisition deals. Sarah Martinez had become a target because of her family's valuable mineral rights and her resistance to lease agreements that would have given Webb's associates access to the property. When Sarah discovered evidence of cattle theft on neighboring ranches and began asking questions that threatened to expose the conspiracy, Webb made the decision to eliminate her as a threat. The investigation ultimately led to arrests of 5 individuals involved in the conspiracy, including Marcus Webb and 2 associates who had direct involvement in Sarah's murder. The case revealed systemic problems with oversight of livestock sales and mineral rights transactions that had allowed the criminal operation to continue for years without detection. Webb was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His associates received lengthy sentences for their roles in the conspiracy, cattle theft, and disposal of evidence. The convictions brought some measure of justice for Sarah's family and other victims of the criminal organization. The Martinez family used the settlement from a wrongful death lawsuit to establish a foundation dedicated to improving safety for ranchers working in remote areas and supporting law enforcement training for rural crime investigation. Elena Martinez continued her advocacy work until her death in 2019, having seen her daughter's case finally resolved and having helped prevent similar tragedies. Sarah Martinez's case highlighted the unique challenges facing law enforcement in rural areas where vast distances, limited resources, and complex jurisdictional issues can hamper investigation efforts. The case also demonstrated how the intersection of traditional ranching operations with modern industrial development can create new opportunities for criminal activity. The energy boom that has transformed much of the American Southwest has brought economic opportunities to many rural communities, but it has also attracted criminal elements seeking to exploit the complex web of mineral rights, land ownership, and industrial operations. Cases like Sarah's have led to improved coordination between law enforcement agencies and better training for investigators dealing with rural crimes. The case also underscored the importance of community vigilance and communication in rural areas, where neighbors might be separated by miles but still depend on each other for safety and support. The ranching community's response to Sarah's disappearance and their continued efforts to support her family demonstrated the strength of these traditional bonds, even in the face of changing economic and social conditions. The mystery of Sarah Martinez's disappearance and the discovery of her remains 9 years later serves as a sobering reminder of the dangers that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most familiar landscapes. What began as a routine cattle-moving operation on a family ranch ultimately revealed a complex criminal conspiracy that had been operating in plain sight for years. Sarah's story is both a tragedy and a testament to the determination of those who refuse to give up the search for truth. Her family's persistence, the dedication of law enforcement investigators, and the chance discovery by oil field workers combined to finally bring justice for a woman who died simply for trying to protect her family's legacy and livelihood. Today, the Martinez Ranch continues to operate under the management of Sarah's cousin, who has implemented new safety protocols and communication systems to help prevent similar tragedies. The land that once held such terrible secrets has been restored to its intended purpose, supporting the cattle and the family that has called it home for generations. As we've seen in this case, the American West continues to evolve, but the fundamental values of justice, family, and community that have always defined this region remain as strong as ever. Sarah Martinez's legacy lives on, not just in the foundation that bears her name, but in the countless lives that have been made safer because people refuse to let her story end with an unsolved mystery. Remember to like this video if you found Sarah's story compelling. Subscribe for more true crime mysteries from the American West, and let us know in the comments what cases you'd like us to investigate next. Justice may be delayed, but it should never be denied.